Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing Live Show number 368. I am your host, Lauren Gray, and we are talking about something awesome today. Actually, we talk about something awesome every Friday. But in this particular case, it's a little bit of a what if and how abouts, and we get to talk about a segment of our efforts that don't really get focused on when it comes to the term marketing, and that is sales, group sales, contract sales, local negotiated rate LNRs, whatever you want to call all the variations that you have to worry about. Sales is a critical component to the overall strategy of a hotel. Now, marketers can look at it as the part that they get left over from after they chase transient, but sales is a valuable, well, actually, incredibly irreplaceable portion of what hotels do. Now, some hotels and resorts, like, hey, I don't do groups, so you're talking about something I don't have much interest in or value, is not true because there's always a displacement value. There's always a contribution value of sales when it comes to how you have to create your strategies. And our topic this week that we're going to focus on for today's discussion is what do you plan on doing differently for 2023 budget goals? Now, we could talk about the marketing component in the sense of what you plan on doing different for marketing. But I really want to focus in on today on what can we do about sales? How can we improve sales? Because marketing in sales is a critical combination. If anybody thinks that marketing is only for transient, they're missing a high value opportunity of what sales does. Now, let's kind of step back through a little bit of history of sales in the perspective of hotels and the value proposition they represent. Sales, way back when I was first starting, was the department for business generation. Whether they put an ad in the yellow pages or a local newspaper or advertised in something else, they were the juxtaposition of anything that related to getting people in the door. Their job, their role was the funneler of top line revenue. There were no revenue managers. There was reservations managers, front desk managers that handled the logistics of what the business was that came in the door, like this was corporate or this was this, or whatever segmentations. And they would have influence on recommending what they thought were rate strategies depending upon that particular segment. But sales was the dog that wagged the tail. They were the ones that dictated what direction was the source of our business. Now, in that program, you had a sales team, and they were incentivized by saying the more of the, and they were segmented. There were salespeople reflective of individual aspects. Banquet and catering manager sales was the person that was responsible for driving that segment of revenue. In-house food and beverage when it came to any aspect of group sales, but more importantly, driving businesses. They were the Smurf chasers. They were the ones that were looking for getting people in. They were going to have large banquets and or food service requirements and common use space. Those were their focus. Then you had people that were focused, salespeople that were focused on the relationship contracts, the local rates, people that were out there beating the streets, doing the blitzes to go out there and drive local contracts for businesses with your hotel. And then you had the omnipresent director of sales. And the director of sales was the person that negotiated the contracts associated with large contracts. They were the ones that handled the consortias. They were the ones that handled the national contracts. They were the ones that handled any dialogue that gave them that they were in a role that they had the ultimate authority decision. Now, in deference, general managers were usually in the dialogue with DOSs so that if they were going to go over and schmooze a large negotiate a client, the GM was there as well to affirm the decision was supported by the powers that be, the decision makers, that they were in agreement. But the DOS wagged the tail. They were the ones that brought them to the table, negotiated to the point of conclusion, and they were the driving force of the continued value, the return value of those clients for the following year. Why do I bring that up? Because we're talking about what are you going to do different for 2023. So we're not going to get into how sales first controlled internet and how it gets segmented and so forth. The sales teams were incentivized by the fact that they had to produce. Their production was rewarded. They got bonuses. That's still the case today. There's a bonus structure. Some people will say the carrot's gotten smaller and the stick's gotten longer, but the most part of it is there is still an incentive relationship between how much business, what type of business comes in and how large it is, and that is incentivized through the sales bonus program. So in today's world, we have gone through, and I know this word is so overused, unprecedented changes in our world and our business. We've also gone through an unprecedented change in staff and team. Let's bring that to perspective. So, 2019, balls rolling. We're talking about the granularity of how to differentiate ourselves from our comp sets, redefining our ability to get in front of the right guests, targeting correctly. We're still working with the idea that revenue management made decisions, marketing was tasked to facilitating, sales was left to do their own thing. There was some collaboration. I know that I was working actively to get convergence as a dialogue where all the teams were working together. We've had that discussion on the show many, many times. And then, boom, COVID, late night 2019 hits us 2020. I think all of us kind of remember where we were when we first found out that the world changed, when all of a sudden things were getting closed, flights were being canceled, conventions were being shut down, restaurants were being shut down. We were told to basically shelter in place, stay away from people, and what have you, um, with no clear discernible solution, just reaction as to mitigations. And our world went apart. First, it was a hold your breath, and then came the furloughs and the wholesale culling of the herds as companies were out into self preservation mode. They weren't driving, getting business. Shifts in where the business was going. From our point, from a hospitality perspective, there was no place for it to go. Restaurants had minimal delivery services available to them, takeout services to some degree, but getting the crews in the restaurant was getting them working. They were just shut down. There was like go learn how to cook at home. Hotels don't go. Matter of fact, shut down. You can't. The rules and the laws about how many people get together, how many could be in the same room, just was a dagger to the heart for us in the safety of our society, at the, not knowing what COVID could do, and it was doing bad at that point. All that was going on. So 2020 started as if it was to be a regular year, and then plummeted into an abysmal pit. Any graph you look over historical trend right now, 2020 is that big drop. 2021 saw for us in the industry a massive tsunami of demand of when people were feeling they were safe enough to travel, mostly in summer. There was always the defiant ones, but the people that decided to travel in the summer, and we had unprecedented. See, I'm just going to keep using that bad word. Demand in summer. We literally could name our price and get it, and offer less services because we didn't have the staff, because the furloughed staff and everything tried to find other jobs. So last year in 2021, in the fall, was the Great Resignation, where we lost so many people that were changing careers. Like, look, the grass is greener over there. I can do this. I can remote work, whatever. I'm not going to stop working here and go do this. Now we have the Great Regret. People love naming segments where people are feeling, wow, this change in my life isn't what I had hoped it to be. The grass wasn't necessarily greener, so to speak. And they're coming back. Why do I bring all this up in our discussion today? Because we have gone through an amazing flux of skilled versus educated people in roles that they have been given because of indifference of not being able to find anybody to fill that role, and changing our criteria to find somebody. Our experience requirements for this have all changed. Again, why are we bringing this up? Sales has had the most, they're the canary in the coal mine, the frog in the field, whatever way you want to look at the analogy. They are very clear in showing the diversity of awareness. This might be a lot of people's first budgeting planning season in their career. Now, to be at the a level of a DOS or something means that there has to be some level of previous ability. Some people may have adopted it as a part of their marketing because they were the front person on developing business. They may not be familiar with the RFP processes that go on this time of year, have been going on this time of year. Request for proposals, by the way, for those that don't know the acronym. They don't know the processes and the life cycles of what they're supposed to do. And now they're faced with their first budget in 2023. Now, our only historical reference that they can look to in short term is the fact that we had the tsunami of demand in 2021. And then we had a gradual growth of regular type of demand at the beginning of this year that went into this whole flood of the whole system's not ready. We don't have as many replacements yet. Airlines weren't able to handle it, so forth and so on. Our supply chain issues, our inflation rates, gas prices changed the drive market, everything else. So there's no real baseline for a lot of decisions, financial decisions to be made based on our historical data. We just don't have enough data for some of the new people in their role to look back on. Now, they can take, if they're wise and smart, they can go back in history and take several years. And we've discussed this process called weighted average mean. Look at an aggregate of several years over the span of normal, abnormal, return from normal or abnormal, and average out the impact of their segments as it relates to the contribution value over the overall of what those numbers represent. But it still doesn't answer one of the critical components of current sales teams, and that is, where do I start and what do I do? There's an old client list, and the unfortunate part is a lot of those contacts aren't the same contacts anymore. There was a lot of changes in roles and so forth. So a lot of the old, as we used to say, Rolodex, for those old enough to remember those, the Rolodex was the prized possession of any salesperson. That was literally locked up every night. It wasn't left out. That was the salesperson's lifeblood. That went with them when they left. That was a condition of, if they didn't, they made copies of it. Let's put it that way. That was their ability to walk into their next business and say, I have a list of people I can reach out to that I can rekindle business for this hotel. We now have that as our private emails and so forth. And yes, there's people that still will call that off of their contact list. So they keep their own list of people that they want to dialogue with for their own reasons. Some salespeople that are in the role now that may have been elevated to DOSs or what have you, or director of caterings or what have you, have some experience to it to some degree. But if they've had just 2 years experience in that role, they have no normal experience to reference to. And so because of that, they are looking at, how do I project 2023? They're staring right now at this year's and last year's business roster. And there's probably gaping holes in group business when there was no group business allowed or no group business to be had. That this was the first year, in all probability, from all people's perception of this, that companies had even a budget towards having gatherings or going to gatherings. That there was when it comes to attendance, it's one thing that you have a client that's willing to have a conference at your hotel. It's another thing that they can draw the numbers that they want to draw and fill the room block that you provided them and fill the space for food and beverage. That's a whole nother story. So everybody is trying to scamper to getting this ability to communicate. But what has happened also in our time for technology is that our tools for getting to these people have improved, our ability to improve. Um, Most people think automatically when they think of salespeople, why aren't you exploiting the use of LinkedIn? LinkedIn is the businessman's social platform, or business person, businesswoman's social platform. It is the place that you can reach out to people. You're right. And historically, it has been a good, strong resource. It hasn't historically been a dominant resource, but a helpful resource. Unfortunately, LinkedIn wants to make money too. And so they've opened up more and more the techniques and tools and serviceabilities of people soliciting on LinkedIn. I think I speak for a lot of people that I'm tired of the pseudo happy smiley LinkedIn connection requests or invitations to programs. I have no idea what they are. Because as people learn the skills, okay, of implementing things on LinkedIn, you get a barrage of just white noise junk. It's the same with anything. Marketers will screw up everything, right? Um, that you almost, it's hard to cut the chaff from the wheat when it comes to finding out whether this is a real person that wants to contact me. And we all use our different criteria of, do they even know other people that I know? If there's none to zero, then that means this is solicitation or just out of the blue. I'm in a category of interest that they've looked up and I'm on a list of it, and they're sending out a, hey, I saw your profile and I think that we have great synergy between our two companies. I'd love to learn more about yours. When do people think that worked? Maybe the first time? Oh, I saw your business and I'd like to know more about XYZ company. And I'm going to get on a phone call and go, oh, I'm so glad you're interested in my company. Let me tell you all about it. And it's not reason why. As soon as they just want you to shut up and start listening to what they have to say. So LinkedIn has turned into this diluted place of traffic. It still has value, still has merit. But how you use it is more important than the actual usage of it. As they say in the preseason for the NFL, the score may not be important, but the game is. The skill sets that you learn, the tempo and the pace and so forth. Same too with this. It may not be the result of what the intent of LinkedIn is, but the usage of it is important. the ability to call and gather um, people in a category of commonality that you're looking for. We'll get to that in just a minute. So anyway, so here we are. We're looking for 2023's budget. Where we are right now, and we're transitioning quick out of this as the end of the month is coming up next week-ish, at the end of next week, is we are in the gathering phase. We've talked about this on previous shows already, where this month is taking all the data that we've accumulated for historicals and actuals to date, and all this data, and we're putting it into piles. This is what we know about people that have called us and been interested. These are the people that we've actually done business with. This is what our comp set has done business with from the reader board tracking or the business tracking we've done of what they've been doing. This is the new, this is the awareness of what we have in market, so forth. There's sources of gathering that general clump lump data. Okay, for banquet and catering managers. Okay, weddings are coming back and so forth. They're coming back in a flurry actually because of all the pent up demand for those and all the Smurf business, the fraternal order gatherings and the reunions and everything else. And getting those contacts reestablished, pursuing who those people are, is where you're next going to go. Right now, it's just gathering, is there people out there that are traveling for these reasons, which there is? Why, what time of things that they're looking for and when? Those are the things you're trying to gather right now by looking and researching them. But we're not at that granular point yet. Right now, we're just lump sum throwing into piles to see what we think would be the contribution of sales by segment for 2023. We're first at the base, first at the bat when it comes to approaching what we think sales is going to contribute to. Now, marketing is on their side looking at what they think they can from the traffic data that they have. We've gone through this discussion on the live show many times before of where they think they can get business for transient business, where people are traveling from, drive market, fly market, purpose of travel, gathering of travel, corporate travel, what they're interested in, so forth and so on. Now, obviously, if you're a brand, you have brand resources to go tap in on. Demand and interest from associations in your market, demand and interest for corporate negotiated rates with your brand. There's some source data that you have from this, and they have some very cute training programs that they try to throw out there, which are more awareness programs than they are actual training. They say, here's where you find this. They don't tell you how best to use it. They just say, we have this in here. And it's up to your skill to know what to do with it. That's not training, that's awareness. All said and done, you first this month, August of 2022, should have already have gathered, if not almost finished gathering, all of your historical information. Plain and simple. You should also have had gathered all of your potential new business based on researching your local market. What new businesses have come in? What new demand to my market might be existing in 2023 that I am aware of? It could be as simple as a company that is in your market that has decided to begin to start doing training. How do you learn these things? Well, old-fashioned way, pick up the phone, call the gatekeeper at a business, going, "Hi, I'm with the hotel down the street, and I'd like to talk to the person that's responsible to handling your hotel bookings for your training sessions." And they may or may not tell you that. The more advanced way is to go in and find people and find out who they are. And this goes to going to their websites and seeing if there's an org chart or a departmental head person, that this person is a CVP or something. It may not be the person you want to contact, but you get to see how they segment out their company, who tends to run what division, kind of thing. And then, of course, the next sneaky way is to see how their emails are made. Is it first initial, last name only, last name only, first dot last name on it? So you get a sense of what their email structure is like, because most likely, once you find out they have a director of housing and training or something like this, and you find out their name, you could probably be pretty quick to guess, well, that's Lauren.Gray at HCA. That's nice, that's cute, and it has worked in the past, but that is not your ultimate best solution. You need more advanced tools because you need to rinse, wash, repeat this. You can't spend too much time on just boring down into one company, not knowing whether it's going to be productive for having done so. You need to do this in a quantitative way so that you can play the odds, looking at large amounts of hotels or businesses in your market for your hotel, and then aggregating your method of communication to them and allowing those people that are directly interested in communicating with you to rise to the top, And then you create a lower tier and a lower tier as to how much effort you continue to chase down. Salespeople very much work on the 80-20 rule. Talk to the people that they give you 80% of your business, which is usually 20% of your traffic. Um, so you are looking to do this in mass. How do you do it in mass? Now, LinkedIn, again, going back to first step tools, is pretty much about, okay, so let's look up companies, see who they are, see who works for them. That's easy enough. If you have a Prime membership, it allows you to actually do research. There's great tools for it. It's not that LinkedIn is a bad tool source. It just don't become overly reliant. It's like a cane with a crack in it. It'll probably work most of the time, but it's the time that doesn't that hurts. So look at the idea of it being a source of putting boundaries around what you understand about what's in your market. How well can you research your local market first, business that's in your market? That's really based upon your role in sales and marketing or sales, um, where you start. And the place that I recommend that you first start is your neighborhood, your market, your DMA, whatever. You grow it as a radius, okay? As simple as it sounds, salespeople, especially if they're new to the role, should drive almost like they're searching for somebody that got lost in the ocean in a concentrically larger growing square, circle, whatever, and look at the businesses that are around you. What kind of businesses around you? Who travels every day with a cup of coffee in their car or on the train to your market? And what company do they go to? And is there business potential with them? And we categorize business potential as easy and kind of captain obvious, like people are being brought in for training or people being brought into corporate office that travel in and out of the corporate office for a variety of reasons because they have satellite offices. Um, those are easy ones because you know that they're going to have need of accommodations when these people come in. The hard ones are now what's new spectrum for us is defining whether or not the company has a larger base of work at home team that comes into the corporate office, the mothership from time to time. Um, whether or not that they have influence on people coming in because of the type of business that they're doing, whether it's for product evaluation, product presentation, um, what do they might have as needs for that. You might find that there's catering halls that need hotel relationships. There's lots of variations to this localized discovery process. There are faster ways. Now that's just for orientation. The better way, the one of the better ways, not the best way or anything, but better way is to use tools that will help you identify already who's in your radius that would be first interested with you. And it doesn't mean that you have to be 1 block away or 2 block away for this to be validated. It could be within a radius because you're near the hotel. They want to talk to you because it's convenient for people coming inbound through the hotel to have the accommodations right there. In the city's still 15 minutes away or 20 minutes away. I don't think anything beyond 30 minutes is warranting most local businesses' attention because at that point there's probably closer alternatives to them, unless of course there's a price point that you're the only price point that is relevant to them, and there's nothing closer to them that is price relevant. There's always those circumstances. There's an exception to all these things. But now you have a sense of where you are in the presence of what's around you. The best tool to do something like that is local scraping tools. There's a tool we're going to discuss in the podcast today. It's called Google Local Scraper. Google Map Scraper. What it really does is very, very cool. You pick a pin on the map, basically, and you radius out from it. And it will, using the Google Map platform, it'll pull every business, their location, their website, contact information of all the businesses that are in that radius around your business. What makes this good for? Okay, a couple of things. From a marketing perspective, it's very helpful if you need that localized targeting. You're not sending them emails. You're not going to cold call them. You're not going to go and especially if you're a brand, you can't. But even if you're not a brand, it's still not a good point. You're cold calling them via email is not a strong way of first introductions. It can be a big turnoff if we just think of all the junk mail you get. What it is good for is if you can aggregate those email addresses and get enough of them, then you can put them into a custom audience, whether on your social platform like Facebook or on Google Map or Google, and you can begin to create marketing targeted to them. You can message them about being in the market, about your hotel's willingness and availability to negotiate contracts with businesses in the market. They will know by simply seeing your ad and seeing who you are that they are getting this because they are in that market that you have outlined. And they might not be aware of your willingness to create contracts and LNRs, local negotiated rates, with your hotel. And so that awareness is helpful. You can also use the tool for communication about value propositions you have about creating contract relationships with them or rates that you're willing to offer for local businesses. That gives you a good stick in the sand for cultivating what is the purpose of our discussion today. What are you doing different in 2023? You're seeding a field. You're looking to grow more than what you have had walk into your door by their awareness of your presence. You're saying rather than wait for people to discover us or hope that they've seen us for the efforts we have done, we are actively pursuing these people so that they are aware of what it is we want to offer them. Sales. Now, we've only talked about local targeting in the sense of creating those maps. There's other ways that you can do targeting like that. Facebook offers very similar to that from an advertising only perspective, where you can create radiance of people that live within the radiant or just outside the radiant. So you can say, hey, I want people that are just outside or people just in this radiant that I create. And you can send in social media people that would be in that condition that you can give the information to about what you're offering to do. You're sowing out a lot of interest in the hopes that the people that are actively engaged in developing what they need for business that you are offering are going to respond because that is a point that they want to follow. They want to get room blocks already organized. They want to get a negotiated rate for what they think they're going to do for business. They are in that mindset. That's creating the radiant effect. And then you can do that in Google as well. There is the ability to go over and target people locally through the platforms that are used locally as localized hashtags, localized platforms that are in social. You can go and find companies. Once you begin to discover what companies are in your market, like the Google Map scraper is great for getting you names, basically, is look them up on social media and see what their presence is on social and see if there's a way of communicating through their social platform. Maybe there's something to join, something to follow. Nothing's more flattering than when you do engage with somebody to talk about what you can sell them, that you have an awareness of what they are and an awareness of what they recently know. I love that picture what you guys just did about revamping your lobby. That was really pretty cool. Um, we were thinking about doing our lobby too, or whatever it is. It adds a credibility to your interest in them as being less than superficial. Of I just had you on a list and I contacted you. Customizing your communication makes it very helpful in that process. You're not doing all your sales pitches right now. This is as time progresses. What you're looking at now is how do I look at what I'm going to try to do now as it will influence my 2023 budget. So that's localized. That's saying markets and targeting and identifying people in local markets. How do you begin to look at people that aren't in your market that would be interested in your market and for what reason from a sales perspective? Now, this is where brand does have a leg up, be honest and true. Um, they have that kind of aggregate data to show you people that had looked at your market through the brand for group business or small business or what have you. Some brands do better than others. Hilton's has always had a great small business program that they've made available. Whether people utilize it to its full potential is another question. But they have had a very good, successful small meetings program. Um, but that isn't something you can plan for next year. You're looking to seed contract relationships for events and so forth. Okay, so you need to see what's looking into your market. Okay, what people are interested in coming to your market, and if there's negotiated rates that can be developed from that interest. Now, as we talked about Smurf business, there is no real intimate exact way of saying I know that this person XYZ is in the ABC city and they're going to be looking for a wedding in March next year. No, but you can do almost the next best thing. You can see through marketing's data interest for your weddings website or web page, weddings interest in your market. Okay. And you can use that data to say there's a lot of interest. You can look at Google Trends and see weddings in your area and see when they tend to historically peak and look. Now, you may have some of that data from your own business history, but if you're especially pursuing new business sections, this will be a new awareness for you. You can see that March is a good time to push for people in certain areas. And this is done by your marketing data, okay, to say we really want to push the fact that we're a great wedding venue in the city of New York to come up to Schenectady because a lot of people come out of the city and they want a nicer area to have their wedding, a little calmer, a little slower, perhaps. Just saying. Um, They might go upstate New York from the city. The variations are there. Okay. You might be a hub of where people come to before they get somewhere else. And that group block moving is something you can book. There's lots of very creative ways to get people in front of it. Doing all this is laying out a strategy plan for 2023. You're literally just making a list of these things. You're looking at, how do I look at my local market? How do I look at my demand market to market? What segments are interested in my market? And anybody that says, we'll just look at the old data and move forward, is being blinded by one thing, many things, but the one big thing is the world has changed. The mixed composition of work, demand, travel has changed. The mix of how far somebody's willing to travel for an event has changed. Conferences and the demand to conferences have changed. We often relied on, well, we'll wait for the city to give us a citywide. We know that that's a henpecking order, and you're somewhere in that list of preferred to not preferred or not even listed. Especially the bigger the metro you are in, the longer you are on that list somewhere, and not everyone are applicable. So going to your CVB, TDC chamber and seeing what interest they're working with. There's ways creatively to go over and watch the traffic that goes to those websites. There is tools that you can use to watch traffic go to your Chamber of Commerce website. Where is it coming from? What are they searching for? What do they interact with on the site? You can actually see this data without being connected to their website internally with analytics. You can see their point of entries and where their traffic goes and how much traffic it is and what time of year it is and geography wise where it's coming from, and see how that affects your decisions and how it affects your sales strategy. If you see a lot of interest in conferences and what have you, and for the month of whatever it is next year, and that historically has been always a good solid month for conferences, then you can look at that data and say, we need to focus our marketing to get into those markets, to be early aware of those people for us, or those people who are early aware of us, I should say, to make this decision possible, that when we reach out to companies that are looking to come from that market, which is also easy to do, that we can garner ahead of everybody else, them being discussing with us about potentially doing a contract with us, working with us for a group block that maybe somebody else would have possibly gotten had we not gotten there sooner, because we are very much in comparison to other hotels. Now that goes to a conversation about 2023 that is not new for 2023 or 2022 or 2020. It's the SWOT analysis. This might be your first time that you're going through a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats program, which is literally as it sounds. That's why the acronym is SWOT, SWOT, is each of those aspects are what's our strengths, what's our weaknesses, our opportunities, and what is our competitors doing, threats, that would put us into jeopardy that they're able to succeed at that we're not able to succeed as much at. This awareness of what you're strong at, what you're not strong at, and what your competitors are strong and weak at as well is a very powerful tool to use in the process right now, that will be more about going into next month than it is right now. Again, this month has been about accumulation of data, awareness of sources, trends, patterns, aggregating interest towards next year. What do we think is going to be carried over to next year? What do we think is going to be valued at for next year? Laying benchmarks into next year as to, that's a repetitive group that's going in. That is a group that can be repetitive. We have to pursue that one. That one was a non-repetitive one. This is brand new and might be something, but we have no current relationship with them. This is the tier structure of how you approach these projects, in the sense of how do you focus on them. The first is to solidify the ones that are closest to being finished, to the ones that are willing to put their ink on the paper and get signed up. Those are the first ones. Don't think that you almost have it done, so you leave the project or hand it down and then end up losing it because a more aggressive team from another property saw an opportunity because it hadn't been solidified by you yet and steal it. That's happened many times. It happens all the time. Finish the ones that are closest. Then the ones that are the next best opportunity in the sense of largest and scale are wonderful to pursue. But I always rank my sales efforts to which ones are closest for conversion, regardless of their size. Now, I said there's an 80-20 rule. 80% of your business goes to from 20% of the traffic, and those are the ones you should focus on. But a lot of times, if you look at the largest fish to go for, They also know that they're the largest fish. Think of the attractive person in high school, guy or girl. They always got the attention. They always got whatever they needed because of that attention, because it was easier for them because people were paying attention. Your customer, potential or current, is that really attractive person. It's easier for them to get the attention because they are attractive. Well, they're attractive in your market because they represent a nice large chunk of money. So they know that. So they're if you go from their side of things, they're looking at what can they get the most of with the least amount of commitment to. What's the best value they can get out of this? What's the most reward they can get out of this without the most expense? And so because of that, they're the most volatile when it comes to solidifying a contract. They're just not going to go with you because you have what you think is a great deal. And they may know it's a decent deal, but they don't know if the person behind you in line that's chasing them as well has a better deal. So they're going to hold and keep you dancing while they go talk to the other person. If you ever watch Shark Tank, you see this where one of the Shark Tank people offer a certain offer, and then another Shark Tank person, is over there, and the people say, "Well, I want to hear what everybody else has." And the first Shark says, "Hey, you either take my deal now before this guy starts talking, or it's off the table," because they know that they have a deal that can be challenged, and so because of that, they want to solidify the deals before somebody else can give you a question mark as to whether or not it's the best deal. That's why I say when it comes to sales, it's good to chase after the ones that are closest to conclusion, regardless of their size. Get those on the board. Now, there is always a contra argument to this that by picking up smaller pieces, you begin to displace the opportunities that large ones can provide you. I would challenge anybody to do a displacement analysis if you still can. It's a lost art. I built an app once that did displacement analysis, a mathematical one. So you're sitting at a table and you're trying to calculate what the value proposition of having this piece of business over another piece of business. And to do that, you calculate the total contribution of their rooms, total contribution of all ancillary revenues, and the cost internally for running what you think is going to be for doing those things. Like in other words, you have a cost factor. It's a flat factor. Just to make it simple. And from there, you go and say, okay, there's not that many rooms for this duration for that ADR. Okay, each person is going to have this much food and beverage as a part of the package with them, if that's the type of deal that it is. So this is a total contribution of what their revenue is, so forth and so on. That's a sum. Now, how does this compare to this piece over here we're looking at? What are the influencing factors of what that is? Rates, like duration, and you literally compare the two side by side and say this one, albeit smaller, has a less displacement factor than this one, which would be greater because that hinge of that large one actually has a contingency on this one over here that it's displacing this opportunity over here as well. It may be more money short term, but it also locks up our inability to sell because of the block anything over here. It actually the displacement value of that is too high. Let's take the smaller piece where we don't have that displacement ratio as much, and that means we can still take other pieces of business because of it. Sometimes smaller at good rates allows you the flexibility to take on a different contract in that same market, that time segment, that you couldn't had you taken the larger piece. So now you have a big piece and a nice small piece, which is a much larger piece than one large piece over here. And if that didn't make any sense to you, I'm sorry but it's the way displacement analysis works is to weigh against chasing down just the biggest all the time. Going after the biggest fish all the time is not always the best strategy. Sometimes getting a school of fish is a better way. I have great fishing analogies when it comes to that. So the idea is that in your strategies of who you're pursuing, also think of your competitors. So here's this big fish coming to market. It has said in 2023, we're thinking about having uh, X room numbers per month for 6 months, what have you. Let's say 3 months. 3 months, we're going to have a nice block of rooms and we're going to pay decent rate and so forth. So you're like, oh, I want to chase that one down. Now, first off, the 3 months that they're thinking about is your peak 3 months. So you have displacement of transient, you have displacement of other group, whatever it is, you have displacement because they're asking for prime time block. The rate, obviously, in comparison to what you could get for it, will be less. But the durability of the fact that it's for 3 months is a nice big dollar amount that makes your eyes go all watery, saying, "Oh wow, this is great." And you have to look at, is it worth pursuing knowing that you're competing with everybody else in your market? And after doing your SWOT analysis, you may not be the strongest suitor for them. So the more you keep your inventory availability for the negotiations with them at bay, the more in jeopardy other groups that are looking for that same time slot opportunities are questioning whether or not they should be looking elsewhere because you keep putting them off and not signing the deal because you're keeping that open for this big fish over here. You're competing with a lot of other properties. It's a higher risk factor. You can look at a probability score, which we won't get into the math geekiness of that, but you can create a math probability score for that and say what's the confidence factor that we're actually going to get the piece of business based on the factors associated with the decision process, and decide that our probability is low in comparison to other hotels that have a higher probability. And for that reason, I'm out. I'm going to go for the other fishes that are also waiting for anybody else. They might be also asking the other hotels that are in the same competition for this large piece, and they're getting the same deference that they're getting from you, from the others of, oh, hey, until we get this big fish settled, we can't commit to yours. Take what you can get that's closer to the contract at the rates and the prices. I'm not saying take anything, but take the things that you might say, well, that's not as great as we could have gotten over there. And that's a risk factor analysis. Is that really worth the risk of chasing it in the hopes that you do bag it? If you do bag it, you're happy as heck. If you don't bag it, you lost it and the business that you didn't sign because they went elsewhere. Now you lost on both ends. So those processes, again, why we're bringing it up today, have to be related to your assessment of what you're doing different in 2023 on when you take a piece of business, say XYZ company is coming to market because of the research you've done. And this is what the potential value of them are. And this is how many other hotels should be under consideration by them for that piece of business. A risk evaluation of that on the scale of just force ranking. From a scale of 1 to 10, what's the probability of success for this piece of business? Is it a strong probability of success? Not success in the profitability of it, not success in the displacement value of it, none of that. The success of bagging it. 1 to 10. Is it a 1? It's as sure as it can be, other than the pen hanging over the paper, a number 1. Or is it a 10? Or is it all the way down to a 1, which is, we're on the last of the barrel, that if everybody else locks up and can't take this, and the moon and the stars line up, and they have no other choice but to stay with us, we're a 1. Okay. So the idea of risk assessment to this business, this is where GMs and corporate people have to keep a sharp eye, because DOSs can paint a pretty board. This is all the potential business that we've isolated. These are all the companies that we know are coming to market for business. These are all the segments of business types that we feel are coming in. It's a good looking list. It's a nice long list. It looks like we're going to have a hell of a year in 2023. Most of that list is smoke and mirrors. Most of that list is not going to come through. Most of that list is not, we're not the lead candidate for that contract. We're not even in the top category of lead contract potentials for them. We're in the list of whenevers. They're coming to market. We're one of every other hotel that has the same odds of success with them. That list has to get culled to reality. I often, when I was on the corporate side, and even when I was a DOS, even when I was a GM, I always required a confidence factor. Okay, so you have these 10 companies that you're looking at for business opportunities in February. This is great. Love the fact we have a 10-person list. Love the fact that your call sheet was filled up every day with 20 calls. Love the fact that you have in your Salesforce, or have your PMS program for your CRM, this list of contacts and everything else, and you're pounding the pavement, chasing these people down, and you've created this 20 business list of 20 businesses that have potential for booking block in March. That's awesome. What's the reality? Which one do you say right now out of that list of 10 is going to make our board? That's going to go into the book. And for those old enough to remember the book, it really was a book. Right in. Which one's going to bank? Now you start seeing the DOS or whoever put the list together get squirmy. Then you start getting the disclaimers. Well, there's no guarantee. These are we brought this from all this big pile of not knowing to 10 people that we feel really clear on what we think. Great, I got you. I gave you credit for it. Tell me which one is going to make bank for us. Which one's going to book? Well, just rank them for me. Here's a marker. Right beside it, number 1 to 10. Tell me which one is going to be your best shot and which one's the least one. You get a lot of 3s, 5s, 7s. You get a lot of mediocre median stuff. Well, this is strong, but not as strong as this one. So this one's a higher number than this number. And what you end up getting is this what our best shot is, which is fine. You're not trying to be a total dork about this. but you're trying to be realistic about what to expend because in budget discussions right now, you're talking about how the money is going to be spent. We're in the middle of the conversation of what monies are coming in. August is determining what monies are coming in. September is the definition of those monies as it relates to expense. And October is the validation, authentication, and verification of the budget being approved. That's the cycle. Discovery, implementation, authorization. 3 months. Okay. Sometimes lasts longer, sometimes it starts earlier, but usually it runs from August through October. That's the process. We're aggregating the revenue source. We're deciding how much money is going to be coming in, top line revenues. Then we're talking about in September the dissemination of that revenue, the sources being confirmed or at least framed in a realistic way, how that identifies into all of your line item expenses through your profit and loss statement, your P&L. Okay. How does that work into your budget? How much does your department spend to generate that revenue? What resources are available for you to spend? How does it categorize into our FF&E? How does it capitalize into our capital expense? How does it run all the way down to the EBITDA line? How does it work into your costs that you have for labor and for food costs for restaurants or food services? Your front desk team and staff, how many people can you hire and function? What's your occupancy demands to know whether or not you have staffing requirement minimums and so forth? Housekeeping minimums. Do you have the ability to replace pieces of equipment, FF&E again, that are ready for replacement? Is the funds available for it? Is the loan structure correct? These are lots of stuff. Not everybody's involved in all those discussions, but that is the process we're in right now. August, September, October. This is the way we break these things down. So because of that, sales has to be quantified and qualified in their expectations of what they're contributing. The world is based on your group and your transient. Group is what we're defining in our discussions today and better ways of defining it. We talked about localizing our search and identifying by name and location so we can better target our messaging to them to optimize our complete local demand. We talked about looking at marketing tools of outside market demand into market as to where people are coming from for what reasons, to look for their travel, whether it's Smurf business, whether it's corporate travel, what have you, to identify what companies are in relationships so that we can begin to pursue and look for them, okay, by name and by type to be able to solicit them. We looked at what is offered to us in traditional ways, citywides and what have you, from chambers and CVBs and TDCs that are offering, because that's their job, is to solicit business to come inbound to market. What are they pursuing? What are they getting in communication? What is their efforts being done? And seeing how that is impacting demand to your particular property. Sales has to work with marketing. They have to be aware of the data that marketing has to know how it can influence their perspective of decisions and their ability to go over and make better choices for what they're chasing. They then also have to create a great confidence score as to what is the likelihood that this business will come through at what relative value. This is the purpose of our discussions with budget right now, because that number, once it's been solidified to the highest level of confidence that it can be, and not just smoke and mirrors, as simple as this is repeat, this is new business, this is not returning. Those are hard numbers. Okay. That goes into your top line revenue calculation. That's the baseline that now gets used to figure out all the variable costs associated with the budget for 2023. How are we going to spend to get that business? Where we have to spend to get that business? What do we have to spend to service that business? What do we have in the sense of monies to go towards the improvement and FF&Es and self-investments that we need to go and keep the business operational improved? And most importantly to the owners, how much do they get to bank at the end of all this? Or do they have to keep throwing money into the program? That's the process that we're going through. That's why I ask, what are you doing different for your sales for 2023? We have a lot of people that are sitting in the chair now that may not have had the history and experience that most of the time we used to have prior to COVID, that now are relooking. The blessing of that is that they're not tainted with repetitive processes that don't normally work or don't consistently work. There are new, fresh approaches to ways of looking things. The bad news is they lack the experience of looking at it in a way that defines accuracy. So there's a good and bad to both of it. We get people that are out thinking out of the box, so to speak, in the ways that they're approaching how they can develop more business. By the same token, they're not as familiar with the obstacles, roadblocks, or red flags that come up through this process to know whether or not that they're following a fake fish or not. So there's our balancing act. In the podcast today, we're going to talk over about a few tools, actually, as kind of a preview to the podcast, which is not, this is an hour-long discussion on a singular topic. We try to parallel the podcast that we do afterwards when we do recap this show, especially that are about similarities of topics to that. Our podcast this week, we're going to delve into a few of the tools that I used and have used to chase down some of this. Like, for instance, the Google Map Scraper platform. We'll talk a little bit more about it. Things that are plugins for both Chrome and for other platforms, platforms like Find That Lead, that allows you to go in and look geographically for business types and titles, and also to look at a place's website, and it'll scrape emails off of from people that are connected to that website that you can use in your development of your custom audiences program. Then there's other CRM tools like Salesflare, which will go over and help you keep contact relationships going. Obviously, a lot of people use Salesforce. A lot of banquet and salespeople use Delphi. That's an industry type platform. Those are a little Delphi, especially long in the tooth. Very cumbersome, very expensive. And if your property is not using it, then it's missing out its opportunity of value for it. But they're very expensive to use. And there's other tools that are moderately expensive, but are they adaptable and able to be combined into what you're doing is another question to that. So that's what we're going to do with our podcast here in just a little bit. This will be simulcasted again, 11:30 a.m. Sydney, Australia time for our APAC friends, 11:30 a.m. Wednesday for London time for our EU friends, even though we have a tremendous amount of followers on all of the channels that listen to us live at this time. Really, seriously, it's amazing. We simulcast on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, multiple platforms. Say versus LinkedIn, there's only one platform that we do that on, which is mine. That's what LinkedIn limits. But we also, more importantly, are on our TV channel, Hospitality Channel. You can find this on Roku, Apple, Amazon, and Android. It's also an app. You can find it on your Apple iOS or Android iPhone or tablet, what have you. And it's also on the website, talktravel.tv. All of that is a TV channel. You can go in. This show is on the live free side. We have a lot of paid content that's behind the pay gateway, much like a Netflix or what have you. It's $4.99 a month. And there's a lot of content behind that paywall that goes into a lot of what we're talking about here on the show, but in a more granular way. Plus a lot of other great stuff from food and beverage and hotels and so forth. So I hope you see us on TV for that reason. With that, my name is Loren Gray. This has been show 368. We're going into our 9th season at this point, starting at the end of this month. Actually starting last week, but I just kind of put it at the end of the month because it seems like an easier calendar year to follow. And for that, all of that, I thank you for the privilege of your time and look forward to talking to you next week. Everybody. We're there to provide service for everyone, even those that may be put into jeopardy or find themselves in jeopardy.
But we used the cruise ship example. So remember back last year about this time, there were cruise ships that couldn't come into dock anywhere because they wouldn't let them. You're infected and we don't want you.
Yeah, no, it's true to that. I think also too is that we from a marketing side of things for all that's going on with the COVID aspect of all this, we have to amp up and it's terrible to say because right now, I think, this is personal opinion,